Hello YouTube, welcome to another guide by eGaming Television. Today we are going to cover the hyper carry in the mid lane, Cassiopeia.
There is no antidote for me.
Now for anybody that's been watching the Worlds tournament going on right now, they've obviously seen a lot of Cassiopeia, and perhaps you're watching this because you want to learn that champion. The one thing I want you to keep in mind is that Worlds is played on patch 6.18, and of course now we're in 6.19, and Cassiopeia did receive some very small nerfs. The range on her W went from 900 to 800, and the healing on her Twin Fang was reduced from 5 to 25 to 5 to 22. Not much of a difference. Although these are obviously nerfs, they are incredibly small, and Cassiopeia is still going to be an absolute force in that mid lane. But anyways, now let's hop into our pros and cons. I just wanted to mention those nerfs, of course, because she's not going to be able to zone from as far of a distance in this patch. So first, despite that range change, you still have great lane control. The champions you are weakest against, like Syndra and Xerath and stuff like that, will outrange you anyways, even if your W still did have that 900 range. With your ultimate, you're then also able to 2v1 if you are ganked. I've been in many different situations where people come in for a gank on me, obviously they're facing me as they are coming in, I turn around, stun them, and kill both. If they run away, you then have amazing chase potential, considering all the movement speed you get as well. You then outscale pretty much all of the mid laners out there and are considered a hyper carry. With your ultimate, you then have high 1v1 potential, even against those assassin mid laners. As long as they are facing to you, you can stun them and kill them before they even get out. Lastly, in my opinion, grounding is one of the most broken things in all of League of Legends. The fact that you can drop that big zone from your W and have people not be able to flash, or use any mobility tools at all, which even includes teleport and Amumu's Q. He cannot even bandage toss because that has the potential of pulling him out of the pool. Now as strong as you are, you do have no built-in escape, so positioning is rather important on Cassiopeia because until you get some items like the Rylai's and the Seraphs, you are rather squishy. Then, with your very high amount of skill shots, it will take a lot of time to learn, and you do have a rather high skill cap. Then, of course, there is the fact that your stun can be completely dodged as long as you are able to turn your back towards Cassiopeia at the right time. Despite those cons, if you can position correctly and land your skill shots, you can easily hyper carry games. For our Masteries, we go 18 Ferocity and 12 Cunning, grabbing Deathfire Touch as our Keystone Mastery. That Keystone will make your harassment even more annoying, and with that added burn damage, you will be able to push people out of lane. Other than that, you just want to basically pick up as much damage as possible, so you can be an absolute lane bully and hard carry. For our runes, we go Magic Penetration Reds, Scaling Health Yellows, Scaling Cooldown Reduction Blues, and Magic Resist Blues, and Ability Power Quints. The reason for the 6 glyphs of Scaling Cooldown Reduction is to pick up 10% CDR at max level. In our typical item build, we'll only be grabbing 30% CDR, so of course this gives you that extra 10%, and you will be CDR capped in the end. Other than that, increase your ability power and penetration for poking and last hitting, and the magic resistant health helps you remain tanky in that mid lane. For my summoners, I usually end up going Flash and Ghost, but you still have other great options. Cassiopeia is a rather squishy champion, and Flash will save you in lots of different situations. It can then also be great for engaging, as you can flash forward and land a petrifying gaze on targets that are not expecting it at all. Ghost will then add a lot of nice mobility in teamfights, and of course is great to be used as an escape as well. Cleanse, however, is a great pick as well if you are against champions with hard CC. Against something like a Lissandra or a Ryze who do have an easy to land hard CC, you may want the Cleanse so you can actually escape with your life. Ghost won't do much for you in these situations. Then, if you are against assassins, you of course can take Exhaust as well. If an enemy assassin goes into all in you, you can pop your Exhaust at the right time, and you will survive that engagement. Usually then you'll be able to turn around and kill that target at the same time. Ignite and Teleport are options that can work as well, but I'm not that big of a fan of taking these. I do prefer either Ghost, Cleanse, or Exhaust. So now let's quickly cover each ability, starting with your passive, Serpentine Grace. So Cassiopeia cannot purchase boots, but instead, however, gains between 4 and 72 based on level bonus movement speed for a total of between 332 and 400 movement speed. So the main reason this passive is awesome is because obviously you don't have to waste an item slot for your boots, and you can get 6 full items. This is of course part of the reason Cassiopeia is considered a hyper carry, because the fact that you can have 6 expensive items is absolutely ridiculous. Of course, getting those 6 items is going to take longer for you because you don't have to spend only like $1,000 on one single item, but when you get there, Holy shit, do you ever do a lot of damage, and honestly, it is considered the highest single target damage in the entire frigging game. So now let's look at that Q ability, Noxious Blast. After a 0.4 second delay, Cassiopeia blasts the target area with Noxious Poison, dealing magic damage every second for 3 seconds to all enemies it hits. This then deals some pretty decent damage of between a 25 and 85 base, plus 23.33% AP. Cassiopeia will then gain bonus movement speed that decays over 3 seconds if Noxious Blast does hit an enemy champion, and this is up to 50%. This would be where that great chase potential comes in from Cassiopeia. So the first thing to mention here is this is a great way of harassing your enemy, because of course this is a nice little poison and works great with Deathfire. It's also rather decent for farming, although it's not as good as your E, it still adds some nice tick damage. So this of course is a skill shot, and it does only have a 75 radius, so it can be somewhat hard to land for a new Cassiopeia player. The problem is it's rather important to land as well because it does interact with your E, and with it landed and an E hitting the target, you do get some nice sustain in the lane, so landing this is, like I said, very important. And now let's look at that W, Miasma. Cassiopeia spits forth 8 bolts of venom in an arc, leaving toxic clouds of debilitating poison where they hit the ground for 5 seconds. This ability also does have a minimum cast range. This ability then deals magic damage to enemies standing upon it every second, and also applies grounding and applies a slow that decays over the area's duration. The damage per second is between 20 and 80 plus 15% AP, and the slow is between 40 and 80%. The range that you can cast this ability is then between 500 and 800. So the damage of course is not the best part of this ability, it is the fact that it does apply grounding and a slow. This is a great ability to either zone the enemy, or if you do ult them, you will be able to drop this underneath them and they cannot use any mobility tool at all, and if they do try to move out of it, of course they're slowed on top of it. You'll then be able to follow up with all that damage Cassiopeia puts out, and usually get a rather easy kill. Now let's look at that main ability, your E, Twin Fang. So Cassiopeia launches her fangs at the target enemy, dealing them between 52 and 120 based on level, plus 10% AP magic damage. If Twin Fang does kill its target, it refunds its mana cost, which makes it rather good for last hitting. If the target is poisoned though, Twin Fang deals bonus magic damage and heals Cassiopeia for between 5 and 22 based on level, plus 10% AP. That bonus magic damage is then between 10 and 130 plus 35% AP. So the first thing to note is this does have a rather shitty AP ratio, but the bonus magic damage is actually pretty nice, so you want to use it on things that are poisoned. This is why, like I said on the Q page, landing your poisons is rather important. But other than that, there's not too much else to say. This is your main way of farming, and it's really great when you do have a tier on Cassiopeia because you're basically getting that tier stacking completely free. When trading or in team fights, you want to make sure you're landing your poisons, so this Twin Fang will actually do a pretty decent amount of damage. Keep in mind your W does count as a poison as well, so if something is in that poison field, they will be taking increased damage. So here is your last ability, your ultimate, Petrifying Gaze. After a brief delay, Cassiopeia blasts enemies in a cone in the target direction, dealing magic damage to all enemies hit. This is between a 150 and 350 base, plus 50% AP. Enemies facing Cassiopeia are stunned for 2 seconds upon being hit by this ability, and all other enemies are instead slowed by 40% for the same duration. So the reason you see pros being able to juke this and turn around at the right time is it does say it does have a brief delay, it is not an instant ability, and can be juked. For people that are in the lower leagues, this really isn't going to happen too often though. But this is an ultimate I usually like to hold on to a little bit in team fights. I like to wait until there's a situation with multiple people facing me, so I can stun all of them and have a very easy team fight. But we're going to learn how to combo this with your abilities just a little bit later in the guide. For our skill order, we pick up our ultimate whenever we can at 6, 11, and 16. Then we focus on maxing our E for its last hitting and harassment, and then our Q as it is really solid for harassing and last hitting as well. We save our W for last, and we take it at either level 3 or 4, it kinda depends on if we need it to zone or combo that early on in the game. Miasma is a rather strong ability, but we do only need the one early point in it, so we can apply grounding. Other than that, it's just kinda mediocre. For our first combo, we have our main harassment combo, and all we have to do is land that Noxious Blast, and then follow with 3 Twin Fangs. Based on the distance though, and if people are running away, you may only be able to land 2. Also, make sure you are weaving in some auto attacks. You do have a very responsive auto attack timer, so you do want to put those into that combo as well. If we're sitting in a bush and somebody's face checking, we want to drop our miasma quickly under the enemy and follow up instantly with our petrifying gaze to stun them on top of it. Then land your Noxious Blast, and it's going to be really easy because they're going to be sitting there, and then follow up with your 3 Twin Fangs, and then follow up with a Noxious Blast again, if you even need to. In a team fight, like I said, I usually do delay my ultimate, but you never know when they're going to be facing you or when it's going to be a good time. Maybe you're going to have to peel for your carry or something, so it can change drastically when you use your ultimate. But generally, I like to drop my miasma under the enemy team, and then land my Noxious Blast, and follow up with my Twin Fang. When I see a good opportunity, I'll make sure I use my ultimate and follow up with more Noxious Blast Twin Fang combos. Generally, if you are in a close range, it's going to be 3 Twin Fangs for every Noxious Blast. In the early game, you may have to play a bit more passively against certain popular meta picks. You're very mana hungry outside of using your E to last hit only, and until you get that tier, it can be rather hard to manage your mana. Once you have enough gold for the tier, make sure you shove the minion wave and back to grab that tier. Once you have it, make sure you're farming with your Twin Fangs, since you'll get a little bit of mana added to your mana pool, and it will start stacking, so eventually you can get that Seraph's Embrace. Of course, you're going to want to try landing your Noxious Blast and then follow up with a bunch of E's to harass your opponent out of lane. If the enemy laner is playing pretty passively in the mid lane, try shoving the minion wave and look for roams. You'll have a lot of damage, and when you do have the Rylai's Crystal Scepter, of course you're going to be applying permanent slows, and you can get some rather easy kills. You then have the option of camping in bushes if you think the enemy mid laner will follow you, or you suspect the enemy jungler will be coming through. Open with your miasma, and then get your free stun with your petrifying gaze, and follow up with some damage for an easy kill. Since you do have very high single target DPS, you'll also want to look for dragons. Whenever the jungler's around and either mid or bot lane has backed, you usually want to try to get that free dragon. In team fights, you're going to want to stay in the backline because you're still rather squishy with the items you'll have in the mid game, so you have to be very careful. In the late game, Cassiopeia has the highest single target DPS in the game. If you're able to make it to this point in the game, you're going to start demolishing fights. With no built-in escape, however, you have to be very careful how you position, do not get caught out so you can be bursted down. When the enemy team is trying to engage onto your team, you can always drop down your miasma since it will prevent engages due to its grounding effect. This is then a great way of holding squishies in an area, as they won't be able to use their mobility tools. So here are a couple hard matchups, and the most known one would be Syndra, and it's picked against her all the time in the Worlds Tournament. She outranges you, out-harasses you, and out-CCs you. If you're going in for your Noxious Blast and Twin Fangs combo, usually she'll just meet you with her own stun combo. Avoid direct trades and call for ganks. Wait until that late game, because you will outscale her. Another big pain for Cassiopeia is Xerath, and it's due to his high range stun. If you move into range for CS, he can usually meet you with a lot of damage and his stun. One good thing in this matchup, however, is that movement speed you do get when you land your Noxious Blast, and it can make it rather easy to dodge his skill shots, so of course, landing this is rather important. For our last hard matchup here, we have Brand. It's all pretty much based on if he can land his stun combo, and if he does, you're going to have a rather rough lane. Yet again, the movement speed from your Noxious Blast will help you dodge these, and when you do, you can then go in for trades, and without his cooldowns, you can usually kill him. Now we arrive at our item build, and we want to start with a Doran's Ring, Health Potion, and Warding Totem, and of course we want to rush that tier as fast as we can. For our core build, we want to grab the Morellonomicon, Rylai's, and Archangel's Staff. This will give you a lot of nice ability power, cooldown reduction, and of course the slows from the Rylai's. When your Archangels does turn into a Seraph's, you'll also get that shield, which can make you rather tanky, even if you don't really get the items. Now, if we're against something like a Malzahar, where we really need to break that CC, you'll want to rush a Quicksilver Sash, even before you get the Morellonomicon. It'll be fine in lane because sure, you're not going to be doing that much damage, but you do have magic resist, so you'll have reduced damage from trades, and of course when he does ult you, you're able to simply get out. For our item pool, we of course have the Rabadon's Death Cap and Void Staff. One item gives you the most ability power in the game, which is really strong on Cassiopeia, considering you will have 6 full AP items. And the Void Staff gets you through any magic resist. Zhonya's is then one of her best defensive items, as it gives more ability power, and of course that stasis is pretty damn strong. If we instead needed some more magic resist, we also have the Abyssal Scepter as well. Then in that ultra late game, people are going to be trying to kill you as you are a hyper carry, so you could get the Guardian Angel to come back to life. Against a very tanky lineup, you do have the Leandries as well for its nice burn against health, and of course there is the Hextech Proto Belt, not an item I get too often, but it does provide some nice damage and a little gap closer. For the first full build here, this one I take pretty much 90% of the time at least. We take our core, add the Rabadons, Void Staff, and Azonias. This is a great way to get an absolute ridiculous amount of damage, get through any MR, yet have some nice defensive utility as well. For full build number 2, if you are against a Malzahar, of course you add that QSS at the very beginning so you can break his ult, and yet again you go for the Rabadons and Void Staff, as it is a really strong item combo on Cassiopeia. For item build number 3, if you were against instead a lot of AP, you could get that Abyssal and then still stick with a Void Staff, as getting through MR is rather important, and get the Guardian Angel since it does make you come back to life and it does have some MR on it as well. Lots and lots of great options, but honestly, I almost always stick with full build number 1. But anyways, thank you guys a ton for watching the guide. If you guys did enjoy, you can always thumb it up, and if you are new here, you could always subscribe. Make sure you check the video description for our links, and may your skill shots land and destroy your enemies. Peace.
Maybe I've been slipping back, heading south, car sick on a Tuesday, missing cash, blacking out, heartless in a few ways, shit for luck, elbow shredded, I help things steady like too late, please calm the fuck down, I'll do whatever you say, I get it, I'm living too hard and it's time that I stop it, go rising on up and then tumbling down, well it's part of the process.